Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to another interview on Wisdom from North. I'm Jannike, and today it's such a joy for me to be here with Tammy De Mirza. Tammy is an international sought after speaker, a spiritual teacher, and a freedom alchemist. She is the author of the book The Inmate and the Medium and the transformative 5-step program. Tammy is very passionate about helping people break through regrets, judgments, and shame, and to build a life filled with self confidence and a love infused life. So let's get into this. Hello, Tammy. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing? It's good to have you and to be with those of you who are listening in. Welcome.
It's wonderful being with you. I had a session with you a month ago, which was really powerful. And like you said, you were not just putting spiritual band-aids, on my wounds. You were like really going deep. And we worked really on deep programming and belief systems. And that's what I would love to address today. But before that, I was curious about the term Freedom Alchemist. What is that to you?
Well, we really are alchemists ourselves. We don't realize that we are creating our own reality, but we are at all times. So alchemist is something that everybody is. It's not a special term just for somebody who can create something from nothing or nothing from something. So we're all doing it. We don't know we're doing it. And until we understand that we are doing it, we can't create consciously. So we are creating unconsciously, not knowing it. And it's because of what we have learned, what we have experienced, how we assimilate the information, what our filter systems are, how we put it together, what we decide. One of the wildest things that I would tell you about that I learned while I was in the prison system for 5 years visiting my then boyfriend, fiance, husband, because I got married in prison. And we are not together today, but the lessons and the curriculum and the contract was perfect in what we're creating and what he's doing with his life now and what I am doing with mine. One of the things that I learned was in the federal prison system in the United States, I learned really that the laws of attraction, that which we are focusing upon, is what we are expanding or creating. So I learned that you could put 50 criminals with the exact same offense, the exact same charges, exact same crime in front of the exact same judge on one day, and there would be 50 different sentences. Because of the fact that we are alchemists and we are creating our reality. So then I am the freedom alchemist because I have a 5-step method that I'm using at all times. And that is that I help to break the illusion of what you think you're doing versus what you're really doing. And I think you experienced that with me, where I'm going deeper than what your conscious thought is, and I'm going into the unconscious thought. So we're this holy trinity of spirit, mind, and body or physical. And I connect the mind with the spirit of this person. And then the physical comes into alignment immediately. So the 5-step method that I use, and this is my creation, is that I help to break people's illusion. I educate people on their relationships, not just your relationship with others, but your relationship with self, your relationship with money, your relationship with not having a mate, your relationship with everything. And then I communicate love. I teach you how to communicate love to yourself, how to love oneself, and therefore how to pass that love to other people. I help to create bliss, because once you realize that, the last step is a freedom creator. So the bliss is the stage in between what I think I'm doing and why isn't it changing, to realizing your relationship with it, with that thing or that you want or you don't have or you are experiencing that you don't like, and then communicating it with a love language, switching it, making I call an abridgment, or crossing over the bridge to the other side, where you're looking at it and you're learning how to communicate with that, and then creating bliss because you get at peace. When you're in resistance, you feel one way. When you're out of resistance or in alignment, you feel another way, and that is bliss. And then the last stage is consciously creating with freedom, because you understand the game that we're playing here. You understand what's going on. You now know yourself better. You now know that your ideas, such as I'm working with a lady who has blood cancer, and I've never worked with a client who has blood cancer. Come to find out, in digging into her life, she took on the victimization and the victimized, hopeless thoughts of getting cancer from her aunt and her grandmother, because she is highly empathic. And that means she feels everything. She can literally take on the symptoms like I do. But what would I look like if my tongue was swollen 1.5 inches and I felt the choking around the neck and I felt the heart attack all the time? You witness it and then you let it go. So in working with her, one of the main things that I have done lately with her is to help her to realize that her identity about cancer, what it is, what it does, was giving her no choices. And once she got diagnosed with it, she started thinking about her aunt and her grandmother. And her aunt and her grandmother came forward and was giving me this information and saying she wanted to help me so much. She wanted to contribute so much. She wanted to feel what I was going through so much that she took it on. And now her symptoms are going away.
Wow.
So we have these identities of who we think we are, but it's really based on what we do with what we experience. You know, you can imagine loving your aunt and loving your grandmother so much that you really want to know, what do you go through? What does it feel like? What's your mindset? How does it feel? Does it hurt? Are you tired? And then in doing that, you take it on. So of course she got it. Isn't that wild?
Something to be aware of there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'd love to hear a bit about, for those who don't know you, how you, or when you started to open up to these gifts that you have, because you're saying that you receive information or downloads from God or from source. And I've heard that you've had these gifts ever since you were 11 years old. Yes. So I'm curious about what happened then, and how are you receiving this information?
It's been a process of me accepting it. So I'm going to talk about how it got opened and then what I did with it, and how angry I got that I was so different in my 20s. So what happened was, we didn't really go to church, so I didn't know much about God or Jesus or the concept of heaven, hell that Christianity, Protestants believe and talk about so often. So when the pastor came to visit my grandmother, we are sitting there and he is talking to me and my older sister, she's 19 months older than me, about heaven, hell, Jesus, God, love. And I said, I don't feel good when you talk about heaven or hell, but this love word, I know I don't know, I'm not loved. And I said that in front of my mother and my grandmother, because I was, back then, before I even knew it, I was actually reading energy and the words, and each word, each thought that we have has at least 4 components, if not more, 4 main ones: a symbol, a sound, a color, and a vibration. So I didn't realize that before the pastor came, I was reading words, the energy of those. But when the communication started was that evening, because he was talking about Jesus loves you, and I'm like, okay, God, Jesus, whoever these guys are, in my translation at 11, whoever they are, if they love me and I don't feel loved, I want them. How do I get them? How do I get them in my life? And he started the whole Southern Baptist sinner's prayer. You got to do this, John 3:16. And I said, well, how will I know if I say this, if it actually worked? And he said, if you know you need love, which is representation of Jesus, God, ask that to come in and you've got it. And I went, okay. So when I said the quote unquote sinner's prayer, my sister said it alongside me. My life miraculously overnight changed. And I started this communication. What is wild is that my sister, 2 weeks later, I went to her and said, hey, has your life changed? And she's like, no, what are you talking about? And I said, I don't like the same foods. I don't like the same friends. I don't like the same clothes. I don't like, everything has changed. I love this music now and I don't like that music that I loved, and everything is different and I feel different in my body. And she's like, well, I didn't get any of that. And I said, well, do you think you got saved or you didn't? She said, I don't think so. Not compared to what you're saying. To me, the way that I would translate it today from a non-religious standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, is that I had this recognition that there wasn't a lot of love going on around my family. My mother, my father loved me the best that they could, but I obviously knew that there was more. And so when I invited that in, I was actually saying, I need a connection with the non-physical. I need a connection with more than what I'm seeing in this reality, because this reality doesn't feel good being here, which has been one of my issues with being here. And I can say that I'm 60 and I'm just now accepting that I'm here and that I'm different and I don't care who knows it. It's like flying my freak flag and saying, hey, this is who I am. But I have also learned that in the process of uncovering who you are, there's a lot of pain involved in knowing that you're different. And being able to recognize the fact that you are operating on a different way. I was able to communicate with the soul, the spirit, even the parents of the kids at school. So when I was giving information to the fellow kids in school, I didn't know that their parents weren't telling them things. So when I would tell them, why didn't you tell me, that your grandmother was sick and in the hospital and she almost died, I would have prayed for her. They go home and they're like, my grandmother's not in the hospital. And they go home and the parents go, I don't know who this kid is, but you cannot play with her anymore. So I was constantly, until my late 20s, fretting, worrying about what you knew versus what I knew. And it took me almost 30 years to realize what you're getting, Tammy, is not what they're getting. You're communicating on a different level, which is what I use in my work right now. I use the ability to communicate with your spirit, your soul, your unconscious, your non-physical beings that are here, not just your guides and teachers and angels and whatever, people want to qualify that as, but also people who have crossed over that want to help you in your growth, which is the reason that we're here. We're here to grow.
So how do you receive this information? Is it just of a knowing, in a sense? You just feel
it's automatic. It can be an audible voice. It can be an imprint. Now it's pretty much telepathic. Before, I will tell you that when I read books, when I started reading books to figure out who are you, you freak, I started reading mediumship books and I realized that they only had one of the predominant senses that they were using, which is, the clairvoyance or clairaudience, which is actually behind your ear, clairsentience, feeling, clairgustance, tasting, clairscent, smelling. I was using all five. And I wasn't reading about anybody that was just like me. So to define, to give you an idea of this, clairaudience and the way that I receive information is, I may see a holographic imprint or exterior outline of the person, or I may see something very, very detailed like a woman with her hair up to here. She has on pearls tied around here. She has on a navy blue cashmere shell with the sweater with pearls down the, the sweater. And it's actually describing a picture that the woman grew up with over her fireplace. And when I'm describing her grandmother, I can see a part of the body. I can see the whole of the body. I can see the flannel shirt, whatever. This is the cool part. Whatever you need is what I get. So just like the grandmother that had the really tight pearls, the very, manicured hair a certain way, she was yelling at me about her sweater. And I was like, so I even told my client, I said, give me a minute. I need to calm this woman down because I'm sassy and I'm a smart aleck. You can call me a smart ass. So even when I'm communicating with people from the other side or my guides, like there are times I'll say, I'm not telling them that. I'm not saying that. You better give me another way to say it. I'm not doing it. And our guides will laugh at us and go, yeah, we want you present. We want you using your personality. So when I get this information, I know that it's not as much about me, but it's the assimilation of who you are. This is the wildest thing for you to know. Did you know every single thought you have ever had, every single thing you have ever eaten, every single person that you have ever met, every single person that has crossed your path, every single joke that you have ever heard, every single dress and clothing you have ever worn, every single piece of lotion or bug, whether they are microscopic or not, every single thing that you could ever dream of experiences is locked away in your brain. We're just not using the capacity for it. So when you look at the non-physical and that knowledge, it's the compilation of how intelligent did this person decide they were going to be? What components, what personality traits, how do they assimilate information? Is it in symbols? Is it in pictures? Is it through clairvoyance? Is it through clairaudience? Is it through all these different techniques? Or is it a certain way? So they assimilate, the non-physical assimilates the gathering of all of that information. It converges. And then I am told bits and pieces based on you. So the woman who needed to know that the grandmother that we were talking about was, in fact, the one that she grew up with the picture over her mantle, she needed to know. And then when I'm telling the details of this grandmother is apologizing to you because she was very prim and proper and kids were not to speak. They were not to be heard. And she's sorry. But the business deal that you're thinking about doing right now, she says, go for it. You understand what I'm saying? That's the same way with non-physical beings that are your guides, teachers, mentors, masters coming forward. And we actually earn, once we go through the curriculum and we go through these stages, they call it climbing the rungs of the ladder or getting above, the tree level, as I call it. You start getting all that information too. So my clients that I work with, specifically the ones that do mentoring or come into my space or my town to do life transformation programs, where it's very detail oriented for days. We're together 6 hours a day. We go to dinner together. We go to lunch together. We eat breakfast together. They're with me that entire time. Their lives are flipped upside down and they're never the same because they know that they're known. So every single thing that we are doing is based on that whole knowledge that is not limited. You could call it Akashic Records. You can call it anything you want, but it's really the assimilation of you. And in between the lives, what you chose. Because we all choose our eyes, our hair, our parents, our siblings, our mates. And then at each point, there's a crossroads that we choose. I'm going to choose this man or I'm going to choose this path. Or I'm going to choose this or I'm going to choose this. So that's constantly splitting and moving and converging. Does that explain it?
Oh, yeah. There's so many things I can, so many directions we can go here. I want to go deeper into programming and what you're saying, like how we're choosing so many specific things about this life before we incarnate. So I just had one of my members lately write in our group. I have a membership, and she was writing like, are we really like doomed to a destiny because of all these programs that we have? Like how to break out of them. They seem so stubborn, these programs. So can you share a little bit about your perspectives on the programming we come in with prior to this life? And then we can speak about how we can change them afterwards. But I'm wondering about how specific it really is.
Well, it was like I was talking about. There's constant crossroads that you can choose different paths. So I'm going to give you a good example of this. You know about astrology. And astrology kind of tells you, you know, what your tendencies are, what your life path is, kind of that. But I'm going to tell you something. I have broken every single one of the paths of my astrology that was negative. And they no longer fit. So let me tell you, the overall view is, yes, you are here to overcome every single thing that you choose to experience. There's not one thing you can imagine with the work that I do. I am working with people that have experienced some of the worst atrocities and betrayals and rapes, and you just wouldn't believe how many clients come to me with financial ruin and all these things that they've experienced. And you know what? I get excited because I go, you have the same power within you to overcome this and change your life pattern. And I'm the evidence of that because I was homeless for over 2 years. I didn't know how I was going to eat, where the food was going to come from. And I had to get in alignment. And as soon as I would, instead of being in fear, and get in alignment with, I'm thankful that the food is coming, something would happen and somebody would feed me, or I would get wired money from the guy who stole everything from me. I mean, it was the wildest thing. So I was actually proving these spiritual laws while I was homeless, that we can overcome them. I hope it gives all of you hope to know that there's not one thing that you have experienced that you don't have the same power to overcome, and you get to make a choice. So there are guidelines like astrology that tell you you have a tendency to have a hard time in relationships, for me and mine. And now I have that relationship. This is something that just happened since you and I talked. I manifested a relationship, and we have moved very fast.
Amazing.
And where the engagement ring is at the jeweler's, and I'm moving in with him. I mean, yeah, that's the beautiful thing, is that once you get in alignment, I call it love energy. I say fear energy, love energy, what fear energy feels like, what love energy feels like. And love energy, it's miraculous and it moves very fast. So whatever predicaments we are experiencing, we can choose again. And I call it forgive and choose again, forgive and choose again. So I'll give you an example of this today, this programming that we do. So I have a client that I was working with this morning. Yesterday was Mother's Day. And her to-be ex-husband, or already ex-husband, was actually doing something beautiful that he never did while they were married. Now, she found herself getting very mad. You know, why didn't you, she's thinking about him, why didn't you do this while we were married? Why are you waiting until we're divorced or almost divorced in order to do something special for me? Why didn't you see me? Why didn't you validate me then? Why didn't you love me then? Why? And I said, no, it goes much deeper than that, honey. And she said, what is it? And I said, do I have permission to give you intuitive information about what's deeper? And she said, yes. And I said, well, it's actually self-abuse. So what you did, and this is where getting somebody to help you that can read into the subconscious and what you're really doing, not what you think you're doing. Because she thought she was mad at him because at this juncture, he's doing something nice for her. No. She was questioning herself as to whether or not she should have split up with him. Well, gosh, if he could change, if he could do this, if he could, if he could actually get this, then maybe I shouldn't have, I shouldn't be divorcing him, and I shouldn't have left him. And what should I have done? And could he have changed? And I was like, you're self-abusing. So it's like, if you think about a tornado, starting to form. You can see the convergence of the clouds moving, and then it starts spinning, and then it drops. When it drops is when you're in what I call hell. You're completely in fear energy, and you can't see anything but that tornado. So that's the way that we look at life. We look at life as, but this is what's happening, but this is real, Tammy. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, but spirit rules matter. And when spirit rules matter, your thoughts connecting to the higher self of you, getting into the what I call the heart energy, then you can create something new. But if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how many times a day you're thinking about something, you don't know how much energy you're putting towards it, then you don't realize or understand why you are in the predicaments that you are, and they are just predicaments. That's all they are.
Yes, and I would like to go deeper into this because I am on the, I have the same belief in a way, or opinion or perspective that it's the first step is to become aware of your beliefs and your limiting beliefs. But there is where it stops for me, when you actually become aware of them and they're so solid that you still believe in them, even though you know that, oh, it's an illusion, this is not the truth, you know, I deserve love. But still, when you're in the situation, that old belief comes forward because it seems like it's just cemented within your whole system. And it becomes almost like a lie to say that, oh, you know, I know the deeper truth, but my body and my system does not believe that I'm worth loving, for instance. So how do you actually fish up from the roots beliefs that are that deep?
Well, there's a lot of different techniques. There's not just one way. My way of doing it is to sit with the client and kind of survey their garden of life and allow spirit to bring up one of the biggest things that's going to help to get them free on that day, because it's a process of like peeling back the onion, you know, there's piece. Once you get to the root, and I deal with clients sometimes that we get to the root on the very first session and they don't need me for a while. And then there are other clients that are so steeped in belief systems that they actually need some help getting to the root of it. But all along the way, you're fulfilling your contract here with each layering or peeling back of the layers. You're fulfilling your contract of growth. We all are stuck with the conspiracy that is deep within us, that our spirit, our mind, our body, and everyone else in this reality is pushing us to that freedom. Everything is, whether it is a potential mate, a mother-in-law, a mother, a father, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, it doesn't matter. The conspiracy is for you to grow, which is why you're here. And so what happens is that we feel that urge to move forward. We want to move forward, but we don't realize that in the subconscious, you know, I'll just use this, let's say this is the sea level. And so the conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg. But if you really looked at my whole body, you're only seeing a certain small percentage of the issue. Underneath here is where I deal with the subconscious. Well, guess what? There's NLP that actually does timeline therapy, that they do it very different. I can go into the detail of what occurred, what it did to you, what patterns it set up, how it set up those patterns, and how to get you free. NLP or another program, like I say, there's not just one way. You that are searching for this, ask, who is it that I work with? Who is it that resonates with me? Who is it? Find me that person to help me to get through this. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be NLP. I'm just using 2 examples. There's a lot of different techniques and ways to get to the bottom of it. NLP does not give you the details. I have learned that for me with my work, when I give the details, such as there was a 61-year-old man that I did not know. I knew him well, but I'd never talked about spiritual matters. And he owned a fabric store, and I'm in a store, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, actually, I'm not doing the master seamstress stuff anymore. I'm actually doing spiritual work, but I do have a client that called out of the blue, and I told her I would help. Well, he wanted a session. And I said, when you were 5 years old and I was remotely viewing the home, the kitchen, the back porch, the scraggly dog, how big the fence was, where the table was, where his mother was sitting, and the details of that conversation, I was actually able to say, at 5 years old, when you needed your mother, she said this, you said this, she said this, and it messed up your relationship with women your entire life. As a matter of fact, you and your daughter are at odds right now. This is why your marriage has failed. This is why you do not have a viable relationship right now. And if you'll let us get you to healing today, to freedom, healing, then your daughter's going to contact you within 2 days and ask you to make amends. And that is exactly what happened. So what's happening is that we are feeling inside of us this need, this desire, this pressure, this angst, this pain even of being stuck, of not getting it. If you just simply prayed or talked to spirit, however you want to do this, and said, even before you go to bed, what can we do? I've decided I want to get free. I want this pattern to stop. Because a pattern is nothing more than a belief system or a thought that you keep thinking that causes a belief system to get anchored, and then it's programmed in your GPS. See, the beautiful thing is you're wise enough to know that there's a programming. It is that we have added. It's almost like the scales. And once the scale tips, then that's the way you're going to go. And the amount of energy that goes into you making a decision, it's like somebody can look at pornography and be addicted immediately because there was so much energy, and they have addictive personalities. But somebody else can look at pornography or something like that 50 times and not be addicted and not care about it. Other people can look at it and be revolted and go, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just using it as an example. To me, it's very dark energy anyway, and if you're caught up in that, then you're in a web. But in any case, the more energy that you put towards something, the more it gets anchored into you and programmed. So what you're tapping into is, you personally, is that you know that something is programmed, and you're starting to see the evidence of it by really paying attention to what the physical is teaching you or showing you. The physical is giving you the evidence of what is programmed below the sea level that you are unconsciously aware of. When I started realizing, I guess it was about 15 years ago, that I was able to, because of the laws of attraction, and I was learning all of this, and I was picking up a lot of different fields and studies and thought processes and laws and this kind of thing and different teachings. I was kind of self-educating so that I could see, what do you say about this? What do you say about this? What do you say about this? And now I use a compilation of, I would say, all of them together. But I was realizing that I could change my mind about something, but I started to realize that there must be a difference between my conscious mind and my unconscious mind. And so I asked the question one day of spirit. I said, okay, I call it God, love, I call it universe, all kinds of different things. I said, is there a difference between my conscious mind and my unconscious mind? And does the unconscious mind trump the conscious? Yes, every time. Every time. So what is our evidence is what is happening to me in my world. What is this person showing me? What is this situation showing me? What is this potential mate showing me? It's funny because I've been on the dating sites for a while, compiling information, because I was single, and I was gathering information to write a series of 7 books all about relationships, the dynamics of how men think, women think. It doesn't matter if it's gays or lesbians, because there is predominantly a male and a female energy, even in those couplings. So to me, it's not gender related. It is the functioning of why we choose two different people that are male and female dominant, and what that entails, and how to work through that, and how to be a leader in knowing what boundaries you have and knowing what you want. When I compiled all of that information and felt like that was complete was right after you and I did your session. And I remember saying on Thursday, okay, I've got it. I'm going to get off the dating sites on Friday. That is when my mate came in. Because I heard, wait one day. He wrote, and bam. Once we met the very next day, we have been inseparable ever since. And it's beautiful. The key is not him getting in alignment. In my case, I'm attracted to men. It's not him getting in alignment, it was me. And sometimes there's a higher purpose to you being single or married that you're not getting, that is contributing to your life. So imagine, if you will, that being single and yet knowing I'm missing my mate, I know I can't do all of the big things that I came here to do in this life without my mate. I need that support. I had an understanding about it, but surrendering to whatever the highest good is in the process of me getting to the mate, I surrender to that journey. Did you know that makes it go faster? And now I'm going to have 7 books about it because I surrendered, and now I'll be able to help men and women, who I'm predominantly writing to women because I consider the women the leaders. Think about it. We're multitaskers and multifunctioners, and men are one way, like blinders. They can't see but one thing in that box at one time. So does it make sense to you that women are the leaders? So I'm going to be writing to women about what you're looking for, what kind of facades you put up when you present yourself to another being. One of the first things that I did with him that actually turned him on was my business coach, Tony De Salimi, because of watching me in relationships, had taught me how to go into a relationship and set boundaries immediately. You don't wait. You set boundaries because you know who you are, and then you know how to set those boundaries. So the very first phone call we had was Friday night. So I'm on the phone with him, and he is monopolizing the conversation. And I'm knowing, you want me to know you, but I need for you to know that you monopolizing the conversation is not okay. So the way that I handled it was I let him go like 30 minutes of talk. And I'll tell you something, this is one of those little tidbits. Whoever is talking the most on the first date is wanting to convince the other one.
Wanting to convince the other one. Think about it. And I've taught people this in job interviews and meetings and dates. A guy or a male energy, whether it is female or male, will tell you on the very first date every single thing you need to know. It is true. So when I write these books, when I contribute that and I share what I have learned over the period of dating so much with women, all of these lights are going to be coming on around the world going, oh. So when I, at the end of the conversation, just said, I love that you want me to know you. And that's what you're doing. That's why you are taking up the conversation. However, I need for you to know this. Unless it is a reciprocal conversation and I get to speak and you speak, I'm not interested in having another one. So if we have another one, can we do that? And it turned him on. He's like, this is a strong woman. She knows what she wants. It was honoring of me, and it was also honoring of him. So just having these little tidbits that if I would have had the mate a long time ago, I wouldn't have been able to have looked at every single man that I dated or got into a relationship with and said, what are you going to contribute to me? And therefore contribute to the public. I find it really good that you're saying that we're here to actually overcome these programs or obstacles, because sometimes it can seem like there is a doomed destiny there. And not just the experiences we're going through, but also the persona we have, or the personality, or that's we can feel like, but I'm in that way. I have this personality, so I will never be able to do this just because who I am. But that we're actually having that energy and that power to overcome these things. But it is really demanding, though. I mean, it seems like spirit is sometimes expecting us to really become these gods when we're just humans, in a sense. Yeah, I think sometimes I just feel like you expect so much because of back to the belief systems that are really stuck. But you were saying something about that the subconsciousness, if I did not misunderstand you, that the subconsciousness is running the show in a sense.
Yes. Yes.
But does it then work to make conscious decisions that I'm going to love myself, I'm going to dedicate myself to love myself? Does it really help if you're doing that consciously, but your subconsciousness is still running the show?
Yeah, and that's the difficult part, is you don't even know what your subconscious is saying. But I teach all of my clients, especially those that I mentor, the physical world is proving what you're creating and what your subconscious is saying. That's the caveat. So if we were trained to look at, I have patterns going on. And my client today, you have self-abuse patterns. That's the thing that is the ultimate for the ego or the subconscious to rule in fear, is to get you to self-abuse or separating yourself.
But how does she change that? I mean, she can see it.
Is that she becomes aware, and this is why she's in mentoring. She becomes aware of how many ways she's doing it, and that all paths lead. Even though it looks like there's a bunch of different paths, they all lead to the ultimate, which is self-abuse. So I'm going to give you an example of her. So when I first met her, I was in Houston, Texas, and I was doing a healing workshop. And she had been diagnosed with, goodness, it wasn't MS. I forget what it was she was diagnosed with. And epilepsy. And she said, I want you to, because I laid her on the edge of a bed because I didn't have a massage table. And I said, just let me scan your body. And she said, I want to talk about, this diagnosis of epilepsy. And I said, you don't have epilepsy. Can you just let me do my job? Let me scan you. And I get to her hip and I said, can I get on the bed and put one hand under your hip and one hand above it? And she said, yes. And I said, you want to talk to me about the tricycle accident when you were 3? And she's like, I didn't have a tricycle accident when I was 3. I said, yes, you did. And your legs got mangled in it and you're crying. And nobody is paying attention to you. And that woke her up to that subconscious, you see. And come to find out, her parents, she had mangled her leg and broken it and her hip, and had been walking around on that for a week because her parents neglected her and did not take her to the hospital. So you can see how that has its way. It's kind of like growing root systems in you. And then it kind of anchors you and we feel like we're in prison. And when we did a healing over that and we forgave her parents and we had her go to herself as the little 3-year-old and say, I'm protecting you now. Did you know not only did the epilepsy disappear, but the 9 other diagnoses disappeared along with the epilepsy. She had 10 different medical issues. All of them disappeared.
I mean, that is amazing. However, what can we say to those who say, I've tried this? I've done the inner child work. I've done this for 20 years and it's still not working. Because I receive a lot of those emails, like a lot of light workers, spiritual people who are working so much on themselves and they've done all the techniques and it still doesn't change. And I really feel for them because they feel like they're doing the work, but it still is not changing. And they hear of all these amazing stories and they feel, but it doesn't happen to me.
Yes, that is beautiful too. And thank you, because you're speaking to the mass of humanity. And this is the human predicament, is every single one of us come in here with a certain curriculum. If you just stood in that alone and you said, everything that I do not feel good about in my life is actually my job to overcome. If you just accepted that nothing is randomly happening to you as a victim, and that this is actually your curriculum, you move from a disempowered fear state to an empowered state. Mm-hmm. So it's accepting that I haven't overcome it without guilt, blame, or shame. See, what we do as spiritual people is, I know this stuff, but we haven't learned how to really integrate it, to anchor it, to understand how to make this work. That was the purpose of me being homeless and agreeing to go through that, was to prove it in the physical form. So for them, for you, for anyone else that is really upset that you have tried everything you know, you have done everything, you have checked every box, part of the issue is that you want to get it right. And what I would say is take the pressure of that and move it over, because I need to get it is feeding fear energy. If you can move to, okay, so people like Tammy, I'm not the only one saying this, but people like Tammy say that whatever it is I'm facing, I came here to overcome. If you just move to that, you would immediately start standing in power. Hmm. And then from there, you could say, how do I do it? Now, I will tell you that when I was homeless and when I was going through some of the predicaments that I have created to overcome them so that I could teach this, because the teacher has to be in that position in order to say with strength, with energy, I know you and I know what you're going through because I've been there. And let me tell you how to overcome it. It is an accepting and moving to ease, kind of crossing that bridge as I was talking about earlier to, okay, this is my life. I'm going to surrender to this. And then there were times that I would say to God or Spirit, Universe, I would say, okay, so you know how dramatic I am, and you know that I'm hard-headed, so if you're going to give me this lesson, you better give it to me in a very dramatic way, or I'm not going to hear you. I'm not going to get it as in tune as I am. I'm using who I am and being honest and saying, I don't like this. Part of the issue is that we don't accept that we're in this predicament. And we're upset, but we're not really talking about it. We're hiding under it. Like, oh God, if you really saw me, I need to hide this part of me that's not completely perfect. And I do the opposite and strip down naked and pull my clothes off and look at God and say, here I am, you can see this, and we're just going to deal with it. You see what I'm saying? I'm not hiding it, I'm going into it.
Yeah, because to me, that's really embracing who you are and accepting who you are. And that's really self-love. And it's so obvious when you're saying it. And I feel like when we're in the midst of it, it's like, oh, we're feeding the fear and we're not getting that we're feeding the fear. And we try to do it right because we want to be spiritual. We want to do it right because we know so much. And then it kind of bites the tail in a sense that it's interesting.
It's like blindly trying to pin the tail on the donkey. Take the mask off and admit, I'm here, I'm in this mess. There's a portion that I actually talk about in my book. I had been homeless and had been in financial ruin, and I noticed that there was a pattern in me. I would have a miracle and I would be able to pay my rent and pay my car payment or whatever, and then I would find myself on the edge of the cliff again, almost homeless again and again and again and again. And I talk about this in my book, and I finally decided I'm going to overcome this. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to overcome it. And one of the first things that I did was I'm asking for direction in every single step. Because I've found that we as spiritual people that kind of know we're on this spiritual journey and we're supposed to be doing a certain amount of stuff, we will actually think, I know this step and I know this step and I know this step and I know this step. I do the opposite. I go, I know nothing. I know nothing. I don't know how to do this, but this is where I am. So I was asking for guidance to say, tell me what step to do, tell me what to do in it. Even though I'm a teacher, I know that the spirit and the non-physical know so much more about where I am in this moment and what my needs are, consciously, unconsciously. So I just connect and say, give me the stages of this. I've decided I'm overcoming it, and thank you for supporting that. That's what's cool, is that once you make a decision, heaven and earth and everything in between has no choice but to support you in that decision. So one of the first things that I talked about that I did in the book was I heard, get in the mud, get in it, accept it, surrender to it. So I'm literally walking up the staircase in the condo that I'm renting, and I reach down and I'm putting mud, and I'm reaching down and putting mud all over my hair and my face, in my ears. I'm covering myself. I'm saying, do you see me? And I finally just yelled.
Wow.
And I said, okay, God, I've covered my entire body. I'm in the mud. I'm swimming in it. My God, this feels awful. This hurts. I hate being on the edge of the cliff. I hate thinking about being homeless again. I don't want to go backwards, because we keep repeating patterns until we overcome it. So what happened was that I remember saying to God in my angst, I said, the only reason that you see any whites in my eyes and on my teeth is not because I'm smiling, but because I'm mad and I'm covered in this mud. Now what do I do? And he said, sit in it. Just sit in it. So I literally sat down in my hallway, picturing myself covered with this mud, going, okay, what does it feel like? And I surrendered to it. Well, then the steps got faster every day. Do this, do this, do this, do this. I am not special. I am not gifted. I am you. And when I say all you have to do is connect and start talking to the non-physical on your behalf, you are heard and listened to, and you matter as much as I did. And I had to get it the same way you have to get it. It's by connecting. It's by acknowledging where we are, being okay with it, surrendering to it, that we can say, I want the next thing. I don't want this. How do you know what you want and what you don't want if you're fighting it, if you're trying to be perfect, if you're trying to get to the next stage? The only way to get to the next stage is be where you are and say, this is me, and I'm surrendering to this journey, and I don't know how to do this, but I know I don't want to do this. Did you know from that day forward, not once have I had that again? There was always money in my account. And no matter what I spend, within a month or a week or a day, that money is right back in there. If I decide I want a certain amount of money, within a few weeks or a day or an hour, I have that much money in my account. So I hope that this doesn't separate you from getting it, but gives you hope that in you unseparating yourself from the help, because I'm telling you, I'm not special. I don't have more than you have. I have the same brain you have. I have the same ability to communicate that you do. The only reason that I am where I am and that I can communicate with other people on a subconscious is because I did the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So those of us that you interview, we are not different from everyone here. We're not different from you. We're just like you. The problem that I see is that we're not teaching you how to do it. Because you see so many people like Dr. Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, and they're talking about the spiritual laws and the principles, but they're not down in the mud with you saying, this is where you are. This is your pattern. You can do this for yourself by just looking at and asking the non-physical, what are my patterns? What am I not seeing? What am I really doing versus what I think I'm not doing? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a red thread through all my interviews and all the teachers that I've talked to, and this comes up again and again. So I've kind of formed a belief around it that the clue is to surrender and to accept. Still, it's wonderful to hear it with different words. Like from you today, I just got, you know, another piece of the puzzle in a sense on how to do it. Not again to, you know, attach myself to the way or to have like a recipe, but still it's so interesting for me with these interviews, because it's kind of like a part of me just gets it more and more. And I also think that we need the repetition, because we fall out of alignment. We start doubting that anything spiritual works. And then it comes back again. It's like, oh, right. Yeah. And it just resonates and rings true in a sense. And I've also lately, the late years, really discovered what you're talking about finding the gold in the mud. I really come to realize that. And that is so powerful. It's so empowering, because it's so easy to think that there's something wrong we've done because we're in this hole or in these patterns that I failed. But when we look at it, like you're saying, that there's something to overcome. It's like, this is my, you know, like you're saying, my curriculum. It's a totally different way of looking at it. It's like, this is my curriculum. I'm going to make this, you know, and just changing that perspective changes it all. Like when Dyer was saying, you know, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I really believe that. So yeah, powerful.
The issue is that we don't realize that the physical is actually our servant. And the physical means every single person and thing here. And the more upset my clients get, the more excited I get. I had a lady text me and she was like, Richard just did this, and I know this is going to get you excited, but it is upsetting me. And I went, yes, because the more upset you get, the more you will be determined to get over it and to overcome it and to get free. It's like we're all in chains and we're in our own prisons, and we need to unlock that door and let ourselves out. And that was actually what I was doing in that book with the inmate and the medium. I'm sitting in prison with him, teaching him these spiritual principles as I'm going through it myself with being homeless. Mm-hmm. I'm doing my own work and I'm teaching him how to do his work. And he got out of prison years before he was supposed to, by using these spiritual truths and principles. So I was going through my own hard time in the midst of that. But I understood this is our journey collectively, is helping you get out of prison while I'm getting myself out of prison. Mm. And the tangibleness of sitting in prison and watching the different people coming and going and finding out why this guy was in prison and this guy was in prison, because I was, you know, visiting him in a male prison, finding out the dynamics of the people who were visiting those inmates and how different we were and how we were dealing with it. And some were getting breast cancer, which is about intimacy. You know, it's about matters of the heart. How some people were having these bodily things going on. How some of the people that were passed on were appearing in the prison. And I would be sitting there with Phil and go, wait a minute, I got to deal with these people over here that are showing me this black Camino, and I need to tell them to be quiet because I'm in a conversation with you. And it was because the girl had said, Tammy, if anything ever comes through for you while we're in visitation, tell us. And I said, you need to ask his permission. Well, the day she told me he said yes, of course his parents come through. And I'm like, I said to Phil, I said, give me a minute. Stop it right now. I've got you. I'll get back to you in a minute. So, and I'm going to finish this conversation. You respect my time too. I mean, if we were just our authentic selves, which is one of the biggest components of this, is understanding that what we want, we are supposed to have because it's in our curriculum.
I love that. I love that. I believe that. Yeah.
So one time I was in the car, I had been telling people for 5 years, I don't want to be married. I'm never going to be married. I'm not going to be married. And then one day I'm dating this guy off and on. It's not serious. We never talked about marriage. It was convenient. We were having a good time. And I'm about to get on the highway to go to work. And all of a sudden I hear, "You're a liar." And I went, wait a minute. I have gotten in trouble my entire life because I can't lie, because I know that everybody really knows the truth anyway. So I have gotten myself in a lot of trouble when people ask me questions and I tell them the truth. So I'm like putting my hands on my hips, driving my car going, "What do you mean I'm a liar?" And they said, "Tammy, that which you and I put in you, you can't take it out. It's in your curriculum. You want to get married. You got to stop lying about it." I said, "But it feels good. It feels right. I believe it." Tammy, no, it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. I'm saying this way because whatever is in your curriculum will keep coming up as unresolved. This is unresolved. That's the conspiracy. So when I said, "You mean I want to get married?" And they said, "Yes." Did you know I broke up with that guy immediately that day? I broke up with him and he said, "Why are you breaking up with me? We're great." And I said, "Because you've never talked about marriage. So obviously you're not interested in it." And I've been lying to myself. So part of the problem is we don't know who we are. We don't really know what we want. So when we say something or we make a decision or we are deciding, if we knew it, then it would come to pass. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that's a topic for a whole other interview. I feel like I could speak with you all evening because it feels like this is like episode 2, what you just started. But yeah, it makes so much sense. And thank you for sharing, because again, the picture for me becomes more and more whole, even though I always get more questions. Because we can always go deeper. But I love the empowerment in this, and I love how you're really empowering people with your perspectives. And like you said, you had to go through what you had to go through, and I love that you're sharing that humbleness, not to putting yourself on a pedestal. And I think that's a new type of teacher, in a sense. Like 30 years ago, we had some spiritual teachers on pedestals, and we don't anymore. And that's more what I resonate towards, like, hey, I'm like you, I've experienced this, and let's do this together. So
yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
Imperfect. With, the Japanese, when they repair their bowls, when they break, they repair them in gold. And if you saw some of the pictures of those bowls, that's what I look like. I'm the most tormented wood on the planet. The most tormented wood has twists and turns, but it's the most beautiful wood. I did a YouTube about it. And I learned that the most tormented soul, the person who's been through the most, from the non-physical perspective, has the brightest lights, because they've done the overcoming work. And in the process of knowing who you are is when you really get into the fun part of, I know that I'm supposed to be married. I claim it. And guess what? I was married pretty soon. And then I outgrew that relationship. And he and I are still friends. So it's not about, is this a forever love? It's that when you're passing through curriculums pretty fast, then your scenario in your life changes pretty fast to go with that curriculum.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, rings true.
So there is really nothing wrong with you, and nothing is missing in your life other than you connecting with you.
Powerful. I'll let that be the last wisdom today. Thank you so much, Tammy, and all the best with your beautiful work that you're doing with your clients. And thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. And I love you. Your light is so bright, and the effervescence of you is so powerful. I want to tap you on the cheek and say, come on, girl, let's go. You're amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching, everyone. Much light from Norway and the US. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe and click the thumbs up and click the bell in order to get notifications of my new videos. Now I also have a free gift for you. If you want to become a conscious co-creator, you can click on my free meditation below called Meet Your Future Self, where you have the possibility to co-create with the highest future version of you.